I hear you've been a little stressed lately, and I want to really dive into this together today so we can talk about how to rewire our stress stories and regulate our nervous systems to overall just live more peacefully. Over the last few days, I felt really inspired to write down all my thoughts and really create this map of how to recognize and rewire your stress stories and regulate your nervous system in the middle of all of this. And I want to share these thoughts with you today. So I'm formatting today's video a little bit differently than normal, but I really wanted to get cozy together, settle in, and go through the raw material together. So I know it's a little bit less curated than normal, but it felt important to me to do it this way together because I've completely rewired my stress stories this year, and this came straight from my heart. And I know these things can be life-changing. And if you're new here, my name is Brielle, and I'm so glad that you're here. I'm so honored to have you here. I'm a licensed therapist, but I created this channel because I know we are living in kind of lonely times, and I wanted to create a place where we could come together, discuss matters of the heart, and really get to know ourselves on a deeper level while we connect as a community. So excited to go through this with you guys, and let's get into it. So first I wrote down, recognize your stress patterns and your triggers. We all have certain ways that stress plays out in our lives. We all have certain triggers for our stress, and we all have certain patterns that we replay and we recreate when we are stressed out. So the first step is recognizing these patterns and these triggers so that you even know what you want to change in your life. Once you've sort of realized what those triggers are for you, what areas of your life really make you feel stressed out and really put those stress stories on replay, you can start to ask yourself the questions of, how do I behave when I'm stressed? And how do I communicate when I'm stressed? So once you've recognized those triggers, you move to the patterns and you start to take a look at your own life and see in what ways are these stress stories playing out in my life. So for me personally, as I was going through this process this year, asking myself that question, how do I behave when I'm stressed? I started to recognize I take myself way too seriously. I start to take life really seriously. And I start to disengage from the things that make my life meaningful. I start to not act like myself, essentially. And I realize that my patterns of communication become unhealthier when I'm stressed because I'm not being as intentional with my words and how I'm communicating. I'm a little more reactive when I'm stressed out. Recognizing these triggers and then patterns and behaviors was really the first step in being able to shift out of this and create a new paradigm for my life. And they say, awareness is the first step in change. You have to become aware of what your issue is in order to be able to shift it. So I do think that's a very important piece of the puzzle so that you can even begin to work to change this. Something that I find incredibly helpful in addressing triggers and patterns and behaviors that pertain to those triggers is doing shadow work. And I have a whole other video about shadow work that I can link in the description if you want to go and check that video out. But essentially, shadow work is just, I wrote down, looking at the root of why certain things cause stress in our lives. And it's usually tied to early life experiences. Those years of our life from 0 to 7 are incredibly formative years. Those are when most of our unconscious beliefs are formed. Those are years when we don't have a lot of control over what's going on in our life. It's usually at the mercy of our parents or our caregivers. And if there's trauma in that time in your life, it makes sense why your nervous system is geared towards stress and scanning for danger. And I talk more about this in the shadow work video that I did, but this is why nervous system safety is such an important precursor to doing shadow work, because when you start to do shadow work, you are potentially bringing up and unearthing things from a time in your life where you didn't have any control. Even if the root of your shadow comes from someplace after the age of 7, you're still wading into uncharted waters and potentially tapping into something that maybe your body isn't ready to handle. Maybe your body doesn't feel safe enough to handle. So I go into depth about that in the shadow work video, but I do feel like I need to mention it here that when we are becoming aware of our patterns, of our triggers, of the things in our life that we really want to work to change, and we're really trying to bring this to our awareness, we do need to have that safety aspect. We need to know that we are safe. We need to be able to affirm our safety and trust that in ourselves. We need to be able to trust ourselves in order to do that. And building that self-trust and that safety can be a process. So I just don't want you to wade into these waters without that disclaimer. But after you've brought all of this to your awareness, the next thing I wrote down was to create a clear picture of how you want to operate when stress or problems or perceived problems appear in your life. We need to know who we want to be in life in order to become that person. Rewriting our stress stories is a process of creation. We are creating a more happy, peaceful, settled version of ourselves. We're creating the best version of ourselves. And that has to be very intentional. So I think it's so important to actually take the time to consider, who is it that I really want to be? So now you have a picture of who you want to be. You're aware of the patterns in your life that you've been perpetuating and the stress stories that you're holding. So now what? What's next? So what's next is being willing to release the need to see a certain situation as a problem or as stressful. Willingness is the portal to peace. I wrote down here, if you're willing, you're open, and creative solutions or the ability to be in the present moment will be more available to you. So if you're wanting to change anything in your life, there has to be a willingness there. We have to be willing to drop our stubbornness about staying the same. For some reason, we as humans, we're usually very resistant to change. We're usually very stubborn about staying the same. So that willingness really is the portal. It's the way through. It's the way to change. And when it comes to our stress stories, being able to even say, how is this working out for me in ways that I maybe can't see right now? Inviting in the potential that something could be working for your highest good and working for you rather than against you is incredibly powerful, because stress and our stress stories, they don't actually change anything in our physical world. Our brains, they want to feel useful. They like to feel like they're doing something for us by being stressed out, but in reality, it is not changing your external circumstances. All the stress is doing for you is changing your experience of your life, changing your experience of the moment, and changing your experience for the worse. So after this, I wrote down, once there's a willingness, there has to be a commitment to forming new habits and new ways of being. So this, just like any change, is a process of committed action. You have to have continual awareness. I wrote down here that you have to get used to calling yourself out. You have to not accept your own excuses anymore for why your stress narrative is justified. A stress narrative doesn't lead you to creative solutions. Just like I said before, your stress narrative is not changing anything in your external world. It's not leading you to creative solutions. It's not leading you to any solutions. It's leading you down the path of more stress. So you fighting for your limitations, you fighting to keep that stress story, it's that stubbornness I was talking about. You have to be willing and committed to calling yourself out and not accepting your own excuses for why your stress is justified. Now, I have to put a caveat to this. I wrote down next, don't suppress your feelings. Just don't over-identify with them or over-attach to them, but feel your feelings. When I'm talking about committed action, having this awareness and calling yourself out and not being willing to accept your own excuses, I'm not talking about shoving down your feelings, because your feelings of stress can be managed. They're going to come up. We're human. We're going to feel those feelings of stress. I'm talking about the stress narratives that you play into, the stories around your stress, the stories that you create around your life circumstances that reaffirm why your life is always stressful, why there's never going to be any positive change for you, why everything is working against you. Those kinds of stories. It's not feeling stress about a situation, because while that's something I also don't want you to attach to, just like I said, we have to feel it. We just don't need to attach to it or over-identify with it as a core part of who we are, because that's all that is. It's a feeling. Next, I put that we have to accept our mistakes and then recommit to changing the pattern and redirect back to the new story that we're anchoring in. And that's the process of building a habit, right? We continually recommit. Our brains are so strongly wired towards the negative because our brains are wired to always be scanning for danger, especially if there's been trauma in your life. Our brains scan for danger, danger, danger. They're not scanning for safety or peace. They're just wired that way, but you can rewire them towards peace with a continual recommitment to a new story. So that's something that we have to acknowledge, is that I've said this in so many videos and I will always say this. Nothing is an overnight fix. Nothing is an immediate fix. Everything that's going to improve your life is going to take continual committed action. It's going to take you creating new habits, you creating new stories, you anchoring those things in. When I say anchoring in, what I mean, I like that visual because for me, when I was trying to rewrite my stress stories, I can't tell you how many times in a day they would come back up for the first little while. I had this one story where I was always stressing about my life purpose. I was always stressing about what I was meant to do here on this earth, about what am I supposed to be doing with my life. I had this stress story that was constantly replaying in my head, and it would come up every single day. And I got so sick of my own BS. I got so sick of this story of stress. I recognized that my life was passing me by because I was taking myself so seriously, and I was so bogged down by this story, this narrative that I had created, that I had to figure out my life purpose in this moment. So I committed to myself. I became aware of this, right? I committed to myself that I was going to create a different story for my life. I had that willingness. I had a willingness to see, okay, am I willing to explore a different way of being? Am I willing to maybe drop the need to figure out my life purpose right now? And I was willing, and so I took committed action. Every time that thought would pop up in my head, what are we doing here on this earth? What are we meant to do? I would recommit and I would say, nope, that's not the story I want to perpetuate right now. We're in this moment. All we need to do is follow the next right step, is to be in this moment, to enjoy this moment, to be grateful for this moment. Everything else will come when it's meant to. And I had to continually check that old story and replace it with the new story. And that's what I called anchoring in. I was anchoring in my new story. And when this old story would come back up, I always felt it in my body too. It was this bodily reaction of, what if we don't ever feel purposeful or fulfilled on this earth? So once that reaction would come up in my body, I would also have to say, hey, I got you. You're safe. We are safe. There's no danger. There's no danger here. And reaffirming and re-anchoring that safety in both my mind and my body. So that's the next thing I wrote down, was the connection to your body, affirming that you are safe. It's the mind-body connection. So both our mind and our body have a reaction to our negative stress stories. And we have to be able to rewrite it in both places. There has to be that connection, because if there's that disconnect, it will continually keep coming back up and it won't feel all the way rewired at the end of the day. So just like I said, hand on your heart, you can't see my belly, but one hand on your belly, one hand on your heart. Hey, I got you. We're safe. We're safe. It's kind of that, for me, I pictured it like my higher self talking to me, or me talking to the inner child version of me that was scared. Because like I said before, our stress stories, they usually come from when we were a kid and we got this programming that we didn't intend to get, but it stuck around. And we need to sometimes reparent ourselves or soothe that inner child, is really what I mean by reparenting ourselves, and soothe that inner child version of you towards safety. And hey, I got you. We're safe. We're good. Okay. So a couple other ways to do that too. Butterfly tapping. This is a technique that we use in a type of therapy called EMDR. If you haven't heard of EMDR, it's eye movement desensitization reprocessing. It's a type of trauma therapy where you use lights or eye movement, and there's a lot that goes into it. But part of it is we use what we call bilateral stimulation, which essentially just helps to reduce the emotional intensity of certain feelings or certain memories or experiences. So one of the things is butterfly tapping. So you can either cross your thumbs and just tap on your chest, and you can have affirmations of your safety, or you can also hug yourself and tap on your shoulders or your back. You can shake out your whole body. These are all things that just help your body feel safe. It's things that are essentially bringing you into the present moment, helping you have an awareness of the present moment, which is where the healing happens. I always say your point of personal power is in the present. It's kind of a tongue twister. This last point is something I really want to drive home because yes, affirming your safety, self-compassion, talking to yourself in a gentle way, regulating your nervous system towards peace with mindfulness and other tools is so important and can be so transformative. I'm going to read you what I wrote, this last thing that is also so important. I wrote, letting yourself feel good again, have fun, invite whimsy back into your life. When you're in survival mode, your body is scanning for danger, not play. Fun is a physiological signal that your body feels safe enough to expand beyond survival. Whimsy invites flexibility, which is the opposite of the rigidity of stress. Do things that are delightfully useless. So I want to dive into that a little bit. Having fun, enjoying your life, inviting laughter and whimsy and play into your life is one of the quickest ways to rewire your nervous system, to rewire your beliefs, to ultimately change your life. Because exactly like I wrote down, when you're in survival mode, when you're inside in the middle of your stress stories, your body is scanning for danger, your brain is scanning for danger. So when you allow fun and whimsy into your life, this is such a powerful way to tell your brain and your body that we are safe enough to expand. We don't need to be in this place anymore. We don't need to contract into survival mode. We get to expand into play. We're safe to do that. That is such a powerful thing. That is one of the most important things that changed my life as well. I recognized that I was on this journey of searching for my purpose for so long. But what was I actually doing to get closer to my purpose? I was sitting around stressing about finding my purpose. That was keeping me stuck in a loop, stuck in a stress story. It wasn't opening my mind. It wasn't me being flexible or willing. It didn't lead me to creative solutions. It kept me stuck in that place of overthinking, replaying the stress story. So when I committed to changing this pattern in my life and I was letting go of this stress story, I let myself find new fun hobbies. And I told myself, I'm doing these things for no other reason than to have fun and enjoy my life. That's why I wrote down, do things that are delightfully useless, because there's such that dichotomy in life. Everything is so meaningful and so meaningless in the least nihilistic way possible. Meaningless and useless have negative connotations, but I don't mean them negatively here. I mean without the purpose of being productive. They should just be useless in a whimsical way. It should just be fun. It should just be for the purpose of being. And once I allowed myself to get hobbies that were for this purpose, and I started to have fun again in my life and let myself relax, and I stopped telling myself this stress story that I had to figure out my purpose, guess what I got the idea for? I got the idea to start this channel. And this channel has honestly helped me feel the most purpose I felt in my life, because I truly feel like I'm connecting to people. I truly feel like I'm using my experiences, the for better and for worse, my lessons I've learned in life, the things I've learned from years as a therapist and my education. I feel like I get to use those for such a good reason and put them to such good use. And it brings me so much joy to have this channel. And I'm also not placing the weight of the world on this channel. I'm letting it be, and I'm letting it take me wherever it's going to take me in the future, wherever it wants to go. But I'm also not creating a stress story or a scarcity story around this channel. But me letting go of the story finally led me to have this idea, this creative solution of this is an outlet that I can use to express the things that I love, to talk about things I love to talk about that I'm so passionate about. I could only see that. I only had the field of vision and the opened awareness to even let that idea in when I let go of my stress stories. So if I could tell you to do anything from this video, it would be to let go and have fun. Of course, this whole process is important to me, and I needed every aspect of this to change my life. But I just think having fun is such a shortcut to changing your life drastically. So those were all of the thoughts that I wrote down. I'm so grateful to sit here and share them with you. I would love to hear in the comments if you guys have any thoughts. I love hearing from you guys. It makes my life. And if you like this video, I would so appreciate if you would like and subscribe or share it. I'll post some of the videos that I mentioned in the description. I just hope you have a beautiful day.